Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dadsigner podcast. I am Michael Smith, your host, and today I am joined by David Walker. Hello, David. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Yeah, David, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about your design background, where you're from, and a bit about your family?
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Thanks for having me on. So I'm originally from Athens in Greece. I was born there, but I grew up in and around southeast London in the UK. I went to university originally to study radio production. Worked in radio for a couple of years after graduating in London, um, but I kind of ended up falling into a career in marketing. My first couple of roles were purely marketing based. Then I ended up in a role that was in a tech startup where I was in a very small team and had to kind of take on multiple roles and got involved in a bit of design work. This was when I was mid 20s. Um, I realised that I loved doing the design side of things in that job, but not so much the analytical side of things, the kind of pouring through numbers and the data and optimizing headlines and stuff. That wasn't really for me. I loved getting involved in the design side of things, the branding, but also the kind of ad hoc event stuff. I decided that I wanted to do a bit more of that, so I did a few online courses. So I have no kind of formal design degree, so to speak. But I did a lot of online courses and lots of design work on the side for agencies that I worked with. I had been working there for about 7 years and decided that it's we are looking to potentially in the next few years try for a baby, and I decided that I didn't want to be tied to a 9 to 5. I wanted to be there for my son or daughter as much as I could. So decided to bite the bullet and start my design business.
Nice, nice. And how long before you ended up having your first child did you leave?
So I left in 2022, right in the kind of middle of the pandemic. I did a few little jobs here and there right at the start. Did a lot of work for an agency. It was very ad hoc work, and there was no kind of real brand that I'd started, so to speak. And it was through working with the agency that I kind of built the confidence to go, you know what? No, I'm gonna launch my business. This is gonna be. I'm gonna start Walker Design Co. I'm gonna get it off the ground. I'm gonna have my own clients rather than be past clients through the agency. So it was a couple of years building the business, and I mean, I'm still building it. Anyone will say that you never stop building your business, but yeah, that was so a good couple of years now.
Yeah. And are you glad you did it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the things we sat there, my wife and I, and we said that because I never really knew my dad growing up. He wasn't there. He stayed in Greece when I moved over here with my mum, and we both said that that was one of the main things that I wanted to get away from the 9 to 5 so that I could see my children grow up and be a big part of their life, whether that's just kind of random trips to the seaside. We're only 15 minutes away from the sea here. So, yeah, random trips to the seaside or just kind of be there for bedtimes and picking them up from nursery, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, my son is a year old now, and it's just been so amazing being there for that first year of his life. Um, I've been able to kind of be involved in his life in a way that I wouldn't being tied to a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job. I can, like, for example, today we took him swimming in the middle of the day, and I wouldn't have been able to do that before. So it's such a wonderful thing, and I would recommend it to anyone that tries to do it. It's not for the faint-hearted, and there's lots of moments where you kind of go, "Oh, that's yeah." It's how are we gonna pay for food and bills this month? But yeah, it's as the business has grown, it's become a lot easier. So yeah, I'm glad I did it when I did.
Yeah, that's really cool. Before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about your design, and particularly the style that you have, and how I was saying that each brand feels unique and at the same time your portfolio feels consistent. Talk a little bit about the style, how you developed it.
So I design in a very vintage style. I'm heavily inspired by 1940s, 1950s, and 60s design. Always have been. I grew up. One of my foremost memories is driving around with my granddad and listening to Buddy Holly, Lonnie Donegan, kind of 50s skiffle music. That's what I grew up with. I remember like pouring through his records and just wanted to absorb everything to do with that era. So I've always loved it. And when I started my business, I wanted to. I looked at a lot of designers out there, and I thought I want to be different. I want to kind of have my own unique style that people will come to me for, they'll know me for. There's in the UK at least, there's not a lot of design studios that focus on vintage inspired design, and I've always done that. I've always, whenever like growing up, I was always doodling. I'd be doodling little kind of brands, logos, and but they were all inspired by 40s, 50s, 60s design. And so it kind of was just felt natural to that to be my style. And yeah, I do occasionally do work out of my style, but by and large, it's always kind of inspired by the past. And it's nice because I'll have a lot of clients that come to me and go, I'm really inspired by this particular facet, for example. I'm really inspired by kind of 1920s industrial design. And that's cool because then I can go and look into books and look online for resources from that era and take and be inspired by those sorts of things. And then at the same time, I might have a clothing client that's like, I'm really inspired by 60s kind of soul era, and I want kind of that kind of aesthetic brought into my branding a little bit. So I have a lot of clients that like a particular aesthetic and want that in their branding. So it's really cool to be able to kind of incorporate that into a logo suite and into typography and into the color palette that I choose for that business.
Yeah. And would you say most of your clients are UK based, or they're from all over?
They're mostly UK based, yeah. I love getting out there and networking. I used to hate it. I think a lot of designers are kind of very split on it. I quite enjoy getting out there. I'm really lucky where I am on the East Coast, where I have a lot of food and drink businesses near me, and we have a lot of heritage brands as well. And I work with a lot of heritage brands and food and drink brands, also apparel businesses. And we have lots of them around here. So I like getting out there and meeting them and chatting to them. And a lot of the time, I can't work with them at that time, but I can do maybe little bits of work for them and then kind of work with them, build up that kind of relationship with that business. And then kind of eventually work on bigger projects for them. Um, I have just finished work with a US based business though, so that's really fun. I've worked with a couple of US based businesses, but other than that, yeah, just US and UK so far.
And one of them is Goods In. Tell
Yes.
us about that project and the inspiration behind it.
So yeah, so Goods In is they're a retail business based up in Leeds, in northern England. They specialise in salvaged, vintage homewares, and yeah, so the founder approached me towards the start of last year. When I first started my business, I was looking on Instagram and finding kind of all these accounts that I found really inspirational, and I followed them and said from the very start I'd love to work with them. I earmarked them and I said I'd love to work with them one day. And I thought that it might be kind of 2 or 3 years down the line, once my business is more established, once Walker Design Co is up and running a bit more, I might get to work with them. And a year before that, he directly reached out to me, said, "I really love your style. It fits really nicely with us." And I did a couple of bits of work for him, just on some invites. I did an invite to an event, and a promotional leaflet for in-person events that he would exhibit at. But I did them in the style of old 50s newspapers, and I did one in the form of a tax thing that would come through from the post office. So I did those, and then a few months later, that turned into an entire rebrand of the business. He had a great logo to start with, but it was kind of, he decided that he wanted something a bit more versatile, a bit more flexible, and a bit more true to the Goods In brand. So yeah, built out an entire logo suite, badge system, an entire kind of type system for Goods In. So it was a really fun project to work on. Yeah, just it it was when I received that message through, it was a pinch me moment because I'd said from the very start I really want to work with them, and yeah, I'd encourage any other designer that's just starting out in their career, look at some Instagram accounts that and find your ideal client, even if you're not working with them at the moment. Identify, like, look at them and just go, I want to work with them. Maybe save them on Instagram or whatever social media you use, and just say to yourself, one day I want to work with them. Maybe you will one day. Maybe a year two down the line, you get a bit more confidence and the business has started growing a bit more, and you can reach out to them directly. I absolutely recommend it.
Yeah. And the brand illustrations that I see in your portfolio, the guy pushing the dolly and the
Yeah.
entrance, the goods into, did you draw those?
Yes. Yeah. So I've always been into doodling, as I said, and I used to doodle kind of vintage mascots and all sorts of stuff. And yeah, it was. I haven't really done that much illustration for other clients. I've done kind of ad hoc illustration through agency work, but yeah, it was something that I recommended, and it was just to just to bring a bit of character to the business, because the business at the time was a one person business. They've now grown. But at the time it was one person business, and David, the founder, is a very kind of forefront of the business. He is always on social media and on Instagram stories and doing reels. And I said, look, you're the forefront of this business. You're the face of this business. Let's double down on that. Let's turn it into an illustration that gives you a little bit of brand kind of. It gives you a bit of brand. What's the word? Character that you can put onto an Instagram post or your website. That's not a logo. That's not a badge that I've designed for you. That it's just something a little bit different. Just kind of brings a bit more character and warmth to the brand.
It turned out really good. I love the whole suite of assets that you pulled together for them. Yeah, the other thing that stood out to me across your portfolio is your color palette, and it all works together across like the different pieces. But like, where I'm assuming still like 30s, 40s, 50s inspiration there, but like, where are you pulling from to really say like these are the colors that work well?
Um, it's a lot of it's from anywhere really. I try and steer clear of Pinterest. Um, I think Pinterest is great. My problem with Pinterest is that I find that if I mood board from Pinterest too much, I get too my design closely mimics the designs that I'm looking at too much. So what I like to do, I have a huge bookcase behind me full of design books, and I'm lucky that I have lots of antique shops around me. I like going there on a weekly, monthly basis and just pulling out newspapers, old concert posters, any kind of printed collateral that I can get my hands on, and just rifle through it. And I find color palettes there. I find type inspiration a lot of the time, um, and yeah, my wife kind of sighs and kind of rolls her eyes every time I come home with a new box of just dusty old newspapers. Not again. But it's so useful. I have a stack of Second World War magazines that were released during the war, and a lot of my type inspiration comes from there because they just use all sorts of different fonts everywhere. It's just so nicely put together, and um, I love just kind of rifling through paper rather than on a screen. Sometimes it can be tricky to kind of really replicate that color and that character on screen as it is off screen. Um, but yeah, that's part of the appeal, really. Yeah, I love getting out there as well. There's lots of old buildings. There's a town down the road called Lavenham. There's centuries old buildings there. I think the one of the houses in it is in Harry Potter. It's Harry Potter's parents' house. I don't really know. I haven't watched the films, but yeah, I love getting out there and looking at old buildings and visiting museums and kind of taking my inspiration from the real world rather than on screen. But I do use Pinterest and yeah, find inspiration online. Of course, I do.
That's cool. Do you find yourself seeing things differently now that you're a dad? Whether that be like the world around you or the way that you like encounter walking down the street, or what has that been like?
Yeah, yeah. I have a 1 year old now, and the last year has just been totally different. Totally different. Before, I was so kind of focused on my work all the time, and I'd be out here as much as I could. I'm really lucky. I have a garden office, so I have a commute that's about 20 steps away. So I don't really I quite often will spend the entire day in here and not go out. And then my little man came along, and it's just totally different. It has helped me appreciate the fact that I can do what I do, and it's made me appreciate the fact that I can work flexibly, and I have times when I don't have clients. I'm still at that stage of my business. I have times where I have four clients on the go at once, and it's helped me prioritize what's important in life more than anything else. Before, without him, it was very easy just to get completely lost in my work. Um, and I was worried with clients that they wouldn't be understanding of the fact that I have a son and that I have to. There are times when I can't work. There are times that I can't come on a client call. Um, but every client I've worked with since he was born have just been so understanding, which is great. Um, so yeah, it's given me a lot more confidence. It's given me a lot more kind of drive and determination with my business. So my business name, Walker Design Co., is taken from my surname, but my surname wasn't always Walker. It was I changed my surname 2 years ago, just before my wife and I got married. So beforehand, I had a Greek surname, and I decided to change my surname to Walker because my granddad was Walker. Um, he was my father figure growing up. Um, I didn't have my dad around me growing up, and he was a dad to me and a whole lot more. And he only had daughters, so he had my mum and my auntie. So when he died, it's a good few years ago now. When he passed away, the Walker name died with him, um, and I remember he always loved history and looking back through his family tree as well. So the idea of the Walker name dying with him, I didn't like. It didn't sit well with me. So yeah, a couple of years ago, I decided to legally change my name to Walker. primarily so that my wife didn't have to be afflicted with a Greek with a Greek surname, but also so that when we have a child, hopefully a boy, and it did turn out to be a boy, he would have the surname Walker for life, and the Walker name could continue. I wanted to kind of bring that into my business as well, so that's why I have Walker Design Co. It's helped me appreciate the kind of the little things and the big things as well, the drive and the determination to build this business so that my son probably won't end up being a designer. He'll probably be a plasterer or whatever. But the fact that I've built this thing that is there for him to inherit one day, hopefully, that keeps me going on days where I wake up and I've just got complete creative block and I'm
Mm,
just not kind of in the mood to sit there on Illustrator and push some pixels around. That's He is the drive and the determination for me. I have a photo of him next to the computer, and I have little things that he, aka my wife, has given me from him. That just kind of, if I kind of spin around in my chair and I need to look away from the screen for 5 minutes, and I just see that and I go, right, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing
yeah.
it.
Do you feel like since you had the business before you came along, but you knew that was part of the reason you started it, is there a heightened sense of responsibility now that you have a son that wasn't existing, in the business beforehand? Or do you feel like it's a little bit of a relief because you're like, okay, I've been doing it for a few years. I know there's ebbs and flows. We'll be okay. Like, what is your emotional state on the regular?
um, I think before I was less worried about quiet periods. Now I do worry a little bit more about quiet periods because I mean I think every designer has this. How long is that quiet period gonna last? Um, but I kind of try and remind myself I've had quiet periods before, and then I've gone into like a quiet period of 2 or 3 weeks where I've got nothing on, and then all of a sudden I've got 4 clients on the go at the same time. It's I've got a lot more experience and understanding of how it works now. Before, when I did work pass through from an agency, and obviously before that, when I had 9 to 5, it was I wasn't used to. I was just used to a steady stream of work, and I could kind of control that to a certain degree. And I can control it to a certain degree with my business. I get out what I put in. If I don't get out and market myself, if I don't go out to networking events, if I don't send emails out to people, then I don't get the work in. It's there's a bit more responsibility now. My wife is super supportive. She works a 9 to 5, so we have that bit of kind of consistency. Um, it's only with kind of childcare that it's I find the responsibility is difficult because when I go through my busy periods, I don't like being out here too long, but I have to be, and I can't kind of contribute as much on the childcare front. So it's more about the being there rather than the contributing, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Do they ever come out and visit you?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, yeah. As I said, it's 20 steps away, so
Yeah,
I will. I'll occasionally kind of get them. I'll be able to see them walking down from the house, and it's just brightens my day. It's so nice. I'll sit him on my lap and get him to try and push the mouse around, but he ends up just breaking any kind of software that I'm trying to use. Yeah, and then I have
yeah.
to spend an hour trying to work out what settings he's changed, and yeah,
I always hate that. You accidentally hit a couple buttons and all of a sudden everything's different.
yeah. Well, I have a setup on Illustrator so that I know exactly where everything is, and I swear he won't even touch the mouse; he'll just look at it. And it will change. And I was like, how have you done that? And then I have to spend half an hour changing it back to my old settings. But yeah,
uh, nice. Well, yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story, a bit about your work too. These conversations, I say it all the time, they like fly by. but I try to keep them brief so that busy design dads can have a chance to listen to them. But I do have two last questions I want to ask you. And in your brief time as a dad,
Yeah,
what do you feel like has been your greatest parenting success? And what do you think has been your greatest parenting learning or failure?
I think they're kind of. My answer is probably for both, actually. So my answer would be getting over postnatal depression or postpartum depression. Um, I think a huge thing is rightfully made about mums going through postpartum depression, but I also think there's not a lot said quite like publicly about dads going through postpartum depression, and it's a huge thing. I had it really badly for the first few months of my son's life. I think it's not talked about enough that dads can get it as well. It's especially with your first, it's such a huge life changing event. And I probably wasn't prepared for that. I thought I was throughout the pregnancy. I thought, oh, no, I can kind of deal with this. And it's just such a life changing event. It just changes every facet of your life from the moment you wake up to the moment you put your head on the pillow. Absolutely everything changes. And that first few months of my son's life, my postpartum depression was just crippling, and I really struggled to bond with him. And that manifested in me working too much and coming out here and being on the screen, not there supporting my wife and my son, because that was what I knew. That was my comfort zone. My safe space was out here working on stuff, and I I knew that, and I kind of shifted away from being a dad because it was scary, and I was really worried about what I was going to do. All of a sudden, I was responsible for this tiny little thing, and what on earth do I do? And I realized that I was kind of spending way too much time out here. And the reason that I started Walker Design Co. was to be there for him. And my dad wasn't there. And I started this business so that I could be there for my son and be there like from like the moment he wakes up to bedtime, and to be able to say, you know what, you go and sit down to my wife, and I'll do his dinner or I'll do his bath. And I realized I'm not doing that. I started this business so that I could do that, and I'm not doing it because I'm too scared. Um, Thankfully, as I said, my wife is incredible. She is so supportive. Um, she doesn't believe it sometimes, but she is an incredible mum. And she was going through postpartum depression herself, but was at the same time as trying to get over it herself, able to support me through it as well. I came through it after about kind of 5 months after he was born, and really started bonding with him. But it, yeah, I think not enough is said about dads going through postnatal or postpartum depression. It hits you, and that that first few months of his life was my biggest parenting failure because I
Mm.
wasn't there enough for him or my wife. But I'd also say that my biggest parenting success so far in the short time that I've been a dad was getting over that and realizing I need to be there for them. And the reason I set up this business was that so that I could be there for them. So just go and do it.
I appreciate you sharing that. I don't know that I even have realized that the father could go through postpartum, and I mean it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Um, but yeah, it is a huge life shift.
I think it's so difficult as well. I think a lot of dads go through this, the struggle to bond with your
Hmm.
child early on. I think I think I only really appreciated when someone framed it in this way, that the the mum has 9 months to bond with a baby before the baby's born. Dads don't have that. And so all of a sudden, especially when it's your first, all of a sudden you've got this thing that you're responsible for,
Yeah.
that can't tell you what they need. They can't tell you when they're hungry or tired, and you just don't. It hits you, especially with your first, I think. And yeah, I think having a creative career, having my own business, having the flexibility to work when I want to and not be tied to a 9 to 5 was super helpful in that. But it also had its drawbacks because I worked at home. I have no escape from it. It's not like I have an office 5 miles down the road that I can go to. I have an office in my back garden. Kind of, I haven't didn't have that escape. But yeah, I think for a lot of dads, it is really difficult, and not enough is said about dads going through it.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on, sharing your story. If folks wanted to connect with you online or find your work, where can they go to do that?
So my Instagram is walkerdesign_co. I'm on Instagram. You'll find me on Threads as well, and my website is walkerdesign.co. Not
Awesome.
.co.uk, not .com, just walkerdesign.co.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you again. And if you are listening to this and wanted to watch the YouTube video, that is over on YouTube where you can see some of the stuff that David and I chatted about. Some of his work will be live on that video too. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and we will chat again soon.